Okay, quick sound check. I'm on the last minute, folks. You'll understand why later on. It's not gone smoothly today, the setup, but let me know if the sound's all working and you can hear me and see me, and I'll be back in 2 minutes. Right, back to the countdown. Well, we are live, at least I hope I am. This has been a last minute getting everything ready, and I'm still not convinced everything I need is up and working. What is also strange is you appear to be over a minute behind me on the streaming, and I've got the good old yellow banner error on there. So it sounds like there's some buffering going on. I've had some problems setting up the demo I want to do tonight, and I had some trouble recording the video which I'm going to play in. So it's all gone horribly wrong right before we started. So my apologies if things aren't as smooth as they normally are on this. But let's get underway nonetheless and see what we can manage on here. So, right, we are live. If you are new here, please subscribe, like, and share. That helps the live stream, helps my presence on YouTube. And oddly enough, looking at my display here, as far as you're concerned, I still haven't gone live. As far as I'm concerned, I've been talking for several minutes, as you know. So it's all a bit funny and buffering tonight, and I don't know why. So my apologies for that. But please subscribe, like, and share. I appreciate everyone who has been doing that on there. If you are having problems with sound and vision, then do let me know. Also, please. Right, okay, that, Okay, I'm really puzzled. It's now saying excellent connection. So what's going on? I'm buffering again. I'm really bemused by this, folks, on what's going on. I can't find a rhyme or reason to it. The connection, I think the problem is at my end, but I don't know where or how on it, why it's happening, whether it's my laptop, which I find hard to believe, or whether it's something to do with the internet connection here. Again, just closing down as many things as I can on this. It's, yeah, 1 week it works, 1 week it doesn't. I don't know what's going on. Right, okay, I'm going to push on for a little while with this. If it all goes horribly wrong, I'll see what I can do. I am recording everything locally here, so I can potentially splice this together and then upload it afterwards, if that works. And I've also got, I think it might be YouTube's end, because at one point it's saying I've got 18 viewers, and on the other part of my screen it's saying I've got 0. So it's really weird what's going on here. I really am not sure why it's doing it. I've seen this before. I've put down the data rates to try and deal with it. I don't know. Right. Carry on anyway, and just hope that it's working for you all. So on the show tonight, we've got camera settings, we've got image feedback, we've got the before and after challenge, and we've got a member photo of the week. So stay tuned for all of that. Hopefully you can stay tuned for that on there. I'm actually going to start with the before and after challenge, and just to say, don't worry if you're behind on it or you're new to it. Have a go. Have a go with it. Pick it up from the beginning. You can still submit stuff even if you're weeks behind. I've got one which is a week behind on there. So don't worry about that. So far, what have we had on the challenge? It's all about working your way through the stages, and so far we've had, oh yeah, no, I'll do the images in a moment. So far we've had the before images, which is an exercise to photograph a location right at the end of it all. And then we've looked at composition, we've looked at freeze and blur the action, we've looked at aperture and depth of field, we did lenses and focal length the other week, night photography last week. I know some of these are only on exercise 4, that's absolutely fine, no problem. This week it's all about exposure compensation and a little bit more about that. So we'll I'll play in the video. While the video's playing, I'm going to try tweaking a few settings here if I can to sort the problem out. I don't know whether anything I can do on that, but it's still yellow banner across the screen for me. So let's have a look at the video, and I'll be back with you hopefully live in a little while after that. Hello, welcome to In Studio. I'm Ian and Butterfield. This is the 6th exercise in my before and after challenge. This time it's all about exposure, and specifically exposure compensation. Now for this exercise you're going to need a subject who will stand by the window. Now this can be a family member, or in my case I've got my resident studio model Shirley here to help me out. Now what I need you to do for this exercise is put your camera in aperture priority mode and locate exposure compensation on your camera. Exposure compensation will be in a different place depending on the camera that you're using. For me, on my Canon, it's the button, the dial at the back, and I can just dial that up or down. Other cameras, you're looking for a button marked plus minus that you press and then use one of the dials to adjust. Yet others, it will be a button you press and then buttons for plus and minus, and in some cameras it's hidden somewhere in the menus, particularly compact cameras, you'll find it there. Once you find that, make sure it's set to 0. Then, with your subject in front of a window, I've got the room lights on for the purposes of this video, but when you come to create the shots, please turn your room lights out so that your only light source is coming behind your subject. I want you then to frame up the image in 3 different ways. First of all, frame it so that it's tight, vertical on your subject's face. Come in really tight. My shot looks like this. Next, do a horizontal shot. Keep the height still tight, but keep your subject in the middle of the frame. My image looks like this. Finally, position that framing so that your subject is over on one side and you've got much more seen on the other side of it, and create that image. Mine looks like this. Now what you will see with that is the exposure on each of those 3 images is different. Why is that? Well, I'm guessing your camera, like mine, will be in evaluative mode, or the equivalent in your camera brand. Evaluative is the term that Canon use. And what that does is analyzes the scene and tries to guess what your exposure should be. And when it analyzes a scene which is tight vertical, it knows that you are wanting to expose purely for that subject. When you have the subject in the middle, it will give another one. Move it off to one side, it's heavily affected by the light at the side there. And you'll notice they're different. Now, probably the closest to a good exposure on that will be your vertical image. What I want you to do is to concentrate on the other 2 images. Choose one of them, the one that's probably furthest away from what you want, which is most likely to be the subject off to one side. And I want you to then use exposure compensation to step through the exposures on there. So you've just taken a shot with it, exposure compensation set to 0. Now go 1 stop under, then 2 stops and 3 stops. Then go back to 0 and do the 3 above. So +1, +2, +3. So you should end up with a range of 5 images. Have a look at those and determine which one of those is closest to the correct exposure for your subject and your backlighting. You may find that one of the images is a little too dark and the other is a little too bright. Then you can use the 1/3 stops in between to try and find that correct exposure between the 2 stops that you have identified on there. And the chances are that what you will find is that the light from behind your subject affects the exposure, meaning that you will probably need to add 1 to 2 stops of extra light, so +1 to +2 to get the correct exposure. You might want to do that also for the subject in the middle, maybe the vertical one as well. And the purpose of this is for you to understand that exposure compensation is not just to do with the light that you've got available to you, but it's also to do with your framing. So depending on how you frame, you may also have to adjust your exposure compensation. So that's the purpose of the exercise. And the challenge this week, once you've gone through the exercise, I want you to post the image which you think is best exposed for your subject to my Facebook group. Details of where to post the image are down below this video. So thanks for watching this, and hope you're enjoying the exercises and the before and after challenge as we go through these different things each week. And remember, the purpose of the exercise is really to help you become familiar with the capabilities of your camera. So thanks for watching, and until next time, keep making great photos. Bye for now. Right, okay, I've tweaked a setting, but what I am noticing is that the KBS, the kilobits per second, is fluctuating wildly from according to OBS. Sometimes it just drops to half and then back up again, which will be the cause of some of that buffering. So please bear with me, folks. Hopefully, I've put down the base rate that I'm going to be trying to stream at to try and solve some of that, but it's still going from red to green on a regular basis on there. Right, anyway, let's carry on. I want to have a look at the images you've been produced so far on the before and after challenge. So let me head over to Lightroom and have a look at those. I've just got two sets of images here. First of all, from Paul, where last week's challenge was about night photography, and it was all about going through the steps of finding the right time for night photography. Find a building that's lit and then going through it. Now, I don't have the shooting data for Paul's images here, but this one looks to be this. Now, part of the problem that you would have had with this, Paul, is the building itself isn't really illuminated. You've just got a sign that's illuminated on there. But it's sort of given the idea, if you look how, I'm sure I haven't got them in the right order here, the earliest shot on this, the sky's bright, it doesn't look like a night shot. But as you move through, something like that, we've got a bit more of a balance between the illumination on the sign and the sky. And hopefully the exercise helped you as you went through on there. Peter was doing the one from the week before that, which was all about how focal length affects an image. And the aim for this, for those who aren't aware, was to keep the subject the same size in the frame, but shoot it at a range of different focal lengths, and to see what that does to the background, both in terms of depth of field and in terms of size of objects in the background. So as we step through here, we can see one longest focal length to the widest angle there, and that is a marked difference in how that background looks. If you look at this barrier here behind Obi-Wan Kenobi, and to that one, that is the barrier there. So it's much larger in the frame. It's much more pleasing in terms of shallow depth of field. And then we go one more, that's the halfway point on the lens there. So it was all about learning and really understanding what you can get out of your kit with this, and even more zoomed in on that one, along the focal length again. And the background is just a nice, beautiful bokeh blur on there with it. So hopefully, Peter, that's really sort of crystallized it in your mind on there for what's going on with that. Right, okay, so I've just had various comments in the chat about things. The buffering seems to be a little bit better, and that it's been okay for the last 10 minutes. Right, let's carry on. This. So moving along, let me on here. Yep, so that was my video on there. Yeah. Right, camera settings. Oh boy, here's the other one that was causing me trouble earlier today. I'm hoping this will all work on here. Now, I know you won't see anything just yet. If I do that, then yes, you have got the display of what's on the back of my camera in front of you. In fact, you've even got what's being shown through my viewfinder. The problem is, however, that there's nothing through the viewfinder, and I know you can't see it, but on the back there is no monitor screen either. So what I discovered today is that when you connect up the external HDMI so that I can show this to you, exactly what I'm doing, what I'm focusing on, where my focus points go and all that sort of thing, then you see I want to be able to show where I'm choosing to focus so that you know what I'm working on with something like this. The trouble is, I can only see it on the screens in front of me, not on the back of the camera. Why Canon have taken that decision, I really don't know, and I cannot find any setting which allows me to change that. Anyway, be that as it may, I need to move on and do what I'm meant to be doing this evening, which is all about camera settings. And I don't know where the best place to do is just to put that down, might well be. And now if I go into the menu, I can start talking about these. The first camera setting I want to mention is the one we've already mentioned, which is exposure compensation. And just to say, if you have a camera, whether it's a compact camera or a big pro camera like mine, then make sure you know where exposure compensation is. And I know the image isn't, but you can see it on mine at the bottom of the screen, that little arrow going back and to that I'm controlling. And because I've got a live view here, I can see how that affects my histogram and my exposure. Okay, I'm pointing at nothing, but that is the way to use it. As I said in the video, very different effects, very different ways to get to exposure compensation depending on your camera. Right, okay, next, other camera settings that you need to know about. And I don't know why I need to mention this one, except I know that I do. Date and time on your camera. For some reason, I occasionally come across people who don't set the date and time on their camera. And there is a very good reason for it. Let me go to the right menu. Here we go. That is, when you are organizing your images, software will tend to use the dates to do it. So if you leave your camera 1st of January 2017, something like that, all your images are going to get mixed up and in the wrong place. So do make sure you get that in there, that you get it with the right time as well. And don't forget to change it with daylight savings so that everything ties up. One thing I want to say about changing date and time, though, that you may not have considered is, do you change it when you go traveling? I'll let you into a little secret. I don't. I have done occasionally, but I tend not to. I tend to work on UK time for all my travel photos. This is because, oh, excuse me. This is because a lot of my traveling is on cruise ships and we're forever changing time zones. And updating the camera is one thing, but it's not just this camera, it's my video camera, it's my my DJI camera, it's all those sort of things. But I also have a GPS watch that I use to get the GPS data. And so I can make sure that everything is in sync. I just find it easiest to work on UK time wherever I am. That can cause problems the nearer I get to the date line, because the changeover of day then happens to be during the day. But most of my travels, 4 or 5 hours either way, no problem at all with that. I just work on UK time. So I just wanted to mention that one. I have to keep going back into the menus on here because it times out. The next one I want to talk about is back button focusing. And back button focusing, we will find all the settings I need is on for the Canon, and I'm showing these on my Canon R5. Your cameras will be different. If you're a Canon shooter, it won't be that different. If you're a Nikon shooter, all these things will be there, but in a different place. If you're a Sony or a Fuji shooter, they will have the similar functions. They will just be organized differently, and they may be named slightly differently. But the principles behind all the things in terms of the settings will apply. Now, what I want to talk about with this is the importance of why I always go to back button focusing. What is back button focusing? What it means is, and I'll try and show this on here. Let me go wider angle. Instead, at the moment, if I point this at, right, I'm going to point it at something in the distance, I think. Try and, I will actually focus with the back button just to give you the thing. Right, I'm focused on there. Now, if I recompose onto something down here, you can see that's out of focus. And if I half press the shutter release, it doesn't try to refocus, even if I put my focus point over something contrasty. And the back button focus, I use the AF on button for it on here, and I can now do that. I can then refocus, and it will stay focused on there. The advantage being now, if I wanted to compose this shot where that chat on the side was in focus, I could take the shot here, and I've got the photograph there, but my focus point has stayed where it is. So it's really, really useful, back button focusing. Once you've got used to it, you never want to go back. Other examples where it's really helpful, if you're doing something like sports photography where you know your subject is going to hit a particular point, you can pre-focus on that point. I've done it when I've photographed runners. I've focused on a bend as they're coming round, locked it in on there, and I know that I can just take the shot straight away. If you do night photography and you do a shot where you need to get your focus and you have to get the torch out and shine it on an object, and you focus in on that, then if you're not back button focusing, you've got to then flip the lens into manual focus so that when you then press the shutter afterwards, when you're ready to take your shot, it doesn't try and refocus. So how do you get to back button focusing? Well, it's going to be slightly different on different cameras, but on the Canon here, it's done on the button, customized buttons. If I select that, and effectively what I'm doing is I am removing the focusing off the shutter release. You can see, well, I can step through the different buttons on the camera. If I go up to the shutter release there, the options I have on there are just lock your exposure in at that point as you half press the button, start metering, but only complete the metering when you take the shot, or you can focus and meter at that point. So I don't want it focusing on there, so I just set it to this middle option, metering start, and that's all I need to do to get back button focusing working, because the other button, AF on the Canons, is by default a focusing button anyway. So the only thing you have to do is remove it from the shutter release. The reason I started doing it is to do actually with getting accurate exposure with the camera. because it's all about when does your camera calculate the exposure. And my previous camera, it calculated the exposure and it locked it in when you half pressed the shutter release. As you saw, it was one of the options. And what I was finding, I did focus recompose. If I half press the shutter release, pointing at in a different location, half press the shutter release to lock my focus, I'd also lock my exposure. And when I recomposed, the exposure wasn't for my subject, it was for over there. So I was getting odd exposures. So that was the other reason I wanted to take it off the shutter release. So really useful. The big warning with back button focusing is if you are going to switch over to it, switch over at a point where things aren't going to be critical, because you will lose shots for probably the first couple of weeks that you're using it, because you will forget, oh, I've got to press that button. If something happens quickly and you're trying to do it, you'll just go off the shutter release and you go, oh damn, I forgot to press the button at the back. So it's brilliant, but just be aware of that getting used to it time. Another one I always change on my menus is auto rotate. Let me find this one. It's on yellow one. Right. What is auto rotate? Auto rotate is this option here. And best way I can show it is if I do a portrait image. Oh, here's me trying to look through the viewfinder when it's not available to me. I'll try and do a portrait image. This is really difficult on there. You can see that the image hasn't rotated on the back of the camera. If I just play on that and zoom in, why would I not want it to rotate on the back of the camera? Because when I'm checking the back of the camera, the easiest thing to do is just to tilt it and I get a larger image. Whereas if I set the other option on that and say to set it on camera and on computer, and now I do that same shot again as best I can, and right, now you can see it's a smaller image on the display, so it's harder to preview it. Even if I zoom in, yeah, my default zoom, I need to sort that one out. One sec. It would show like that, where I think it's better just to move the camera around so I've got a bigger image on the back of my camera. So I always change that one. Another setting, there's no logic to the order I'm going through these, by the way, is that I want to talk about is picture styles. Picture styles is on, I've noted down where they are in the menus for this talk. Red menu, and it's red 3. Sounds like something out of Star Wars, that. Come in red 3. Right, picture style. Right. This is really odd trying to do it off the screen. It just feels unintuitive. By default, I leave it on standard. When would I change it? Well, the main reason I change it is monochrome. When I'm shooting in monochrome in the studio, particularly if I'm not tethered. Now, these days I'm mainly tethered, so it's not such a deal. But if I'm not tethered, I want to be able to get an idea of what that image looks like while I'm shooting. And by changing the picture style, what it means is, well, you can see I've got a preview in monochrome. Anyway, my image on there is in monochrome, and when I play it back, the preview image, monochrome, oops, it's just not intuitive trying to operate the camera while looking at something else. It messes with your brain. on this. My preview image is in black and white. The raw data is still in colour. So the takeaway from this is you can change the preview. It's the JPEG image becomes black and white, but the raw data stays in colour on an image. So it's a really good way of, if you're shooting or intending your image to be in black and white, to judge what your lighting's like, what the image is going to be like in the final thing. So let me go back to menu. So I change that back to standard on there. The other one, while I'm in here, and you can see it's a new camera, I've not changed it yet, color space. You have two options, unless they've changed it. No, it is still two, sRGB and Adobe RGB. I always have mine set to Adobe RGB. Right, why is this? Well, the color space is the number of colors that you can actually deal with in the image, that can be visible in the image. It's the range of colors, the gamut of colors as we call it. And sRGB is much smaller than Adobe RGB. Now, if you are going to put an image up onto the web, then yes, you want sRGB. And if you are shooting with JPEGs and you're going to use those JPEGs straight off, you want sRGB. If, like me, you're always going to be processing your images, you might as well set it to Adobe RGB. Because when you bring it into Lightroom, the color gamut on there is, oh, mine's gone blank. ProPhoto? No. It has a much larger, is ProPhoto? Mine's gone blank on this. I'm gonna have to check this now. Right, file. Just bear with me a moment on this. External editing. ProPhoto RGB. Yeah, I was right. For some reason, I was just convincing myself it wasn't. And ProPhoto RGB is even larger than Adobe RGB. And that's what you tend to work with internally within Lightroom, but you will then export to sRGB for the web. So you might as well shoot with the largest color gamut that you've got available to you, which is the Adobe one. So I always set it to that. Another one I always set, and this one's over on my yellow menus. Yeah. There it is, beep. You can have it enabled, disabled, or if you've got touch screen, you can have it just turn it off on the touch screen. I have mine set to disable. I like my camera to be as quiet as possible, including the shutter, and that's partly because I do theatre work. So I don't want every time it gets a focus lock to go beep, 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 because that would be really distracting. It's also distracting in a studio, whenever, so just turn it off. You can turn the beep off as well. I always recommend that. Right, over on the red menu, yeah, another one to be aware of, and this is true on any camera with an electronic viewfinder, but it's also true for DSLRs if you have got, if you're using live view, and sometimes it can be hidden under sort of live view type menus, and it's this one, exposure simulation. So why would you want to turn that on and off? Right, let me try and show you this. I've got it set to enable. Now I'm going to go into manual mode on here. All right, so I'm in manual mode. I'm going to change my aperture to f8. 125th of a second. And because I've got lights on in the studio, it's coming up with some, oh, that's the reason why, because I've got my ISO set. Aha, it's going to be interesting. Can't change the ISO easily while I've got the card there. I'm on ISO 800. That's why you can see something of that. Right, I just need to change the ISO. It's in here somewhere. There we go. I put it on my menu. I knew I was going to need this at some point. So just change that down to 100. There we go. So now I've got practically a black image in there. Now that is what I would see if I had exposure simulation enabled shooting in the studio, because the exposure simulation is based on the ambient light. If I was shooting in the studio, I'd have a flash which is going to go off and still give me a good image, but I can't see anything to be able to focus. So what I'd need to do is come in here, and what menu did I say it was on? It was red 7 on there. And if I disable that, now it's not simulating the exposure based on the settings. It's just giving me a display that I can actually work with to be able to focus and compose and things like that. So that is a setting. I'm going to be changing it regularly depending on whether I'm working in the studio or whether I'm outside. And if I'm outside, I want to see the exposure simulation. I want to see through my viewfinder what the camera's going to capture. So I would always have that on there. But when I come inside, I've got to disable it to be able to compose inside the studio. So that's one that's going to get used a lot in the camera. Just to say, there is a third option on there, certainly on my camera. It won't be available on all, and that says it's there, but only when you press the depth of field preview button. So now, if I press that, oh, I'm on F8. Why is that not going? I checked that earlier and it was doing it. Why is it not doing it now? Did I not set that menu option right? No, I didn't set it right. That's why. Drawing. Okay. So now, when I press the depth of field preview, at that point I also see the exposure simulation, which is it's a nice compromise on there. I don't think I'll use it much, but I think there are some people who would on that. So that's that one coming through. I'll come back to my last that one. Right, another good one, and again, most cameras will have this if you've got electronic viewfinders. Even DSLRs actually have this option, and it's a grid display. And I've written this down as being red 7. I am on red 7 and I can't see it. Oh yes, it's hidden under shooting information display. And underneath here, we've got the grid display, and you can have the lines on there to help you with composition. I tend to have the 3x3, but you could go for 6x4. So again, now, can you see the overlaid grid on there, which is great for being able to try and get your horizons straight and your verticals straight and things like that. You also have on some cameras, like mine with an info button, I go through and it doesn't show it on there. Why doesn't it show it on there? There is, in my viewfinder, normally, as I cycle through the info, a spirit level display. Again, I suspect it's not available on the over the HDMI on that. So, right, I just want to catch up on some of these comments at this point. Let's have a look at the chat. There's a few things happened on there. Right, Terry saying Sony is the same. you lose your view with the HDMI cable. Right, yeah, Rick saying, never understand why people don't do that rotate setting that I did. Gary asking, what ISO does noise start? Because he's really thinking of picking up the R5. That's a difficult question. I've not done an actual proper test on it yet, on there. And it's a matter of finding a realistic thing, because what I found with my 5D3, I can shoot at ISO silly and I'd still get acceptable images for theatre because of how I process them, the amount of noise reduction I put in anyway. I have, and by the time they're printed, you'd never see the noise on them. Blown up to A3, no noise on there. Having said that, I'm seeing noise at 800 on this, but I have to come right in to see it. Now, how often am I ever going to have an image where these are 46 megapixel images? I'm never going to, or very rarely am I going to be looking at them at that 100% pixel peaking on there. Where they're going to be seen, effectively it's downsampled out. And if you're downsampling out, you can go pretty high with it without much of a problem on there. So yeah, I mean, at some point I'll do a test on it. I'll set it up and just step through ISOs, but I just need to find a sensible subject. I don't want to just pick something in the studio and do it. I'd rather do it real world. So find a scene outside where I've got deep shadows, bright light, and then you can see it much better in a real world example. Whereas if I picked a black background with something in here, you'd see it in the blacks easily. But let's do it on a real world example to do that. Right, more comments. Rick saying the R5's a bit quiet for his liking. He likes to be able to hear the shutter. There is, you can go to the mechanical shutter, which is a bit louder, a bit loud for my liking actually, but I like quiet. I like quiet and a lot of light. But yeah, on there. And Gary saying he understands there's haptic feedback on the A1 through the exposure button. No noise, but a pulse. Not sure I understand that one to really comment about it on there. So right, okay, let's carry on with these menu settings. Menu. Right. Another one I would always change, and I haven't noted which menu this one is on, so I'm going to have to guess it's on the playback menu, and that is the image brightness, and I can't find this one. No, I can't. It might be under settings on there, but wherever it is, if your camera gives you auto brightness for your LCD, turn it off, put it onto something that you know and understand, because you can't judge it. Well, you should be using your histogram anyway, but if you're using the image to just justify or to judge the exposure that you've just taken, and you've got a variable brightness, you're never going to be able to do it. So find a nice mid setting or low setting on there, set that, get used to it, rather than having a brightness that's going to change on it. So always change that one. Yep. ISO speed settings. Yes, this is one menu. I come over to it again. Something that I always say. The ISO speed settings. I come up on here. Right. One of the things I always do, I always enable the range expansion to be able to have the lowest and highest available. I want to know that it's available to me at any time I then set an auto range for when I'm in auto ISO. Why do I do that? Well, you can see the range that's available to me here. I can go up, you can see how high I can go with it, but I limit it to that because that's what, when I'm doing theatre photography, I let the camera choose the ISO for me, but within that specific range. On there. Right, and I haven't set it on here yet, but a minimum shutter speed. I always say, right, I typically set a manual minimum shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. However, with this camera, I'm gonna knock that down when I'm in auto ISO to probably a 60th of a second, and it will, when it hits a 60th of a second, it will then bump up the ISO. Is the way it works, and it allows you to have some flexibility, but constraining it to a particular range. And I use this quite a lot with theatre photography. It allows the camera to do some of the work for me on there. Oh, right. Robin saying menu 2 for brightness on the spanner menu. So, right. Let's go over spanner 2. Not on mine. Menu 1. Viewfinder brightness. It's on 3 on mine. On there, and you can set those again. Take it off auto is basically the thing on there. Right. Yeah, Rick's saying that he in the chat, he's saying that he agrees about getting it off auto. Get used to your own display on there so that you know what it will look like. Compare it with a calibrated monitor. Very good point on that. Right, back to there. Right, another one that to look at. This one's on red 2. There we go. And this is auto lighting optimizer. Now, a couple of things about this that I want to say. I don't fully understand it. It's the first thing to say as to what it's up to. I think it's only affecting JPEGs and not the raw file anyway. So in that sense, you could say, well, why worry about it? However, if the camera's doing something that it doesn't need to do, I want to see I don't want the camera to be doing the processing for me. It has to do some for the embedded JPEG on there, but I'd rather it was using its CPU cycles for doing other things than applying auto lighting optimizer and giving me a view on the back of the camera that's not necessarily truly representative of the raw file I'm capturing. I want the view on the back of the camera to be as close as I can to my raw file, and so having things like an optimizer on there I don't want. So I would turn that off, and I would again save CPU cycles in the processing and that within camera. on there. There's another setting I want to mention, yellow this time, right, which is over here, yellow 5. And this, I think, is fairly new. I don't remember seeing this on my 5D Mark III, but now it's on the R5 and maybe on some other cameras. This one's worth knowing about. Save / load camera settings on card. And having spent a lot of time setting this up for how I want it, I don't want this to get lost, either because it loses it in the memory, or I've let another photographer play with it and Rick has changed, that other photographer has changed the settings to their liking. No, actually, I'm sure Rick wouldn't do that on me. But if I've saved it off to a card, I've then got the option to load it from a card later. So I've backed up my settings. Or if I've taken the camera in for repair and it comes back and they've set it back to the default, to the factory default settings. This allows me to save all my settings, all this stuff that I've gone through, and back it all up so I can always get back to it. So that one is worth knowing about. 2 more just to mention, and on yellow 6. And I am amazed at how many people don't do this one. Copyright information. And you can enter in your name, and that's embedded in all the images you create. It just helps. So if your image gets separated from you for any reason, there's a chance that someone might find your name in there and know it's yours on that. So always put that in there. The copyright details. Again, I just put my name in, but you can put other information in there as well, copyright years and things like that. So I would always put that in. I've just spotted. Rick has said no, he just changed my settings to Korean. Thanks, Rick. I knew I could trust you. Right, yeah, so set your copyright information on the camera. Always worth doing. The final thing I want to talk about here, get back to one. Is something that's on Canon cameras that I don't know whether Nikons do this, but Canon has this wonderful thing called My Menu, and all those things that you use regularly you can move over onto that menu. So exposure simulation, I told you I was going to be using that one a lot, so I've put it on there. The R5 has got eye detection. And I'm trying to decide exactly what I want on the menus for this camera. So I've not got it set yet. Format card, because I'm always hunting for it. So I put it on my menu, and I can move on. I can add another menu, and you can add multiple menus on here. So you can organize these things, the ones you use regularly, in there, so that it's in a place that you know, rather than, as you saw, I'm going, right, which menu is that on? So the ones you go to regularly, stick them all in one place, and it'll just speed up your shooting when you do have to make changes on there. So those are some of the things I would say about setting your camera up, about some of the settings that you might not have been familiar with, and some of the logic behind the settings that I choose. Now, there's an awful lot I haven't talked about on there, At some point, I'm probably going to do a video going through all the menus on the R5 and talking through them, because I know there's a few of you either considering R5s or using R5s now, so I may well be doing that. Right, let's move on with the rest of the show. And I've run out, I'm officially out of time, but I'm carrying on anyway. Right, let's have a look at some of the images that you guys have been sending in. And I've just spotted a chat which I want to mention. Peter has said on the Nikon it's U1 and U2, so you've got that has a user menu as well on there. I don't know about the Sonys and Fujis. If the Sony and Fuji users on here want to comment on that, then please do. Right, so yeah, I give priority as ever to images sent to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk because I get more information to be able to talk about them. I've had a couple of images sent in that way this time, so let me go over to Lightroom and look at those. So let me get my camera out of the way, get my cable out of the way, and we can talk about them. So here I've got an image from Peter Saltiel, rhododendron, and let's see on here. Actually, I'll go to that. One, that's the state rhododendron. The other one, autofocus, PSP. Not sure what the abbreviation on the end is, and I've got very little information on that one. But the original shot, oh, I think this must be the processed version. So original version processed. Yeah, nice shot processed, nice colours on there. Not bad framing either on that, Peter. Looking back to the original file, ISO 200. You didn't need to go to ISO 200, you could have dropped down to 100. Oh, you're a Nikon, you might not be able to. Some of the Nikons didn't allow it. I don't know whether that's one. But yeah, very slightly underexposed, I would say, that shot. Again, I think you found that when you edited it. You can see that change. Oops, from there to there. Nice cropping on there. Again, I would always encourage you to try and do as much of that cropping in camera. Not bad, actually. Nice shot with it. What about critical focus? That's a small file, I can't tell you. Let's go over here. Right. Yeah, trying to work out where your critical focus point is on that. It's not here where I was expecting it, which is the location I would expect on there. So this is for me, this is the hero petals, the hero flowers for this. So I'd have been focusing on this area here with the image on there. So that's the main things to say about that one, Peter. Let's move on to Tony's Blackbird, and there's a little bit of compression from the JPEG on this image. You can see a little bit of artifacting on there. So as you can see on that. Again, I've not got the shooting data. I don't know why, or I don't know whether it's how you're exporting it, Tony, on there, but it'd be nice to know how it was shot. It is a lovely image. I love the shallow depth of field. As far as I can tell, it's lovely and sharp on there. It's not full resolution, so I can't be too sure. I suspect when you're exporting this, you've got the remove remove shooting data enabled, and you're downsampling it. If you're emailing them to me or retransferring, you might as well send me the big files, and I can give you a bit more feedback on there. But lovely shot, nice composition. I like it on the 1/3 line. Would I change anything composition wise? I don't know. I don't know that it's adding much up at the top. I might just come in slightly on there like that with it. Yeah, I think I'd just lose a fraction at the top and go more into sort of CinemaScope format with that. I quite like that kind of crop with it. Okay. So that's it for the emailed ones. So, folks, as ever, do send them via email to me if you can, because I can give you a bit more information on there. Gary says the Sony has a star menu, and Terry has also confirmed that in the chat. So yeah, it seems that most have a my menu of some description in there. So moving along. Just to say at this point, the live stream, as ever, is sponsored by yourselves. And if you are finding value on this and want to contribute to keeping me online financially, the link's down below. It's a BuyMeACoffee website, except I had mine changed to Buy Me a Cup of, or Buy Me a Tea, because I don't drink coffee. And today's cup of tea is brought to me by Anthony Barker. I don't think Anthony's online tonight, but if you do ever see this, Anthony, cheers on that. So moving along, I've been following the chat as we've been going along on there. So let's finally look at your Facebook images and see what we've got on there. So back over to Lightroom and Facebook. Right, Astrid. I want to talk about these. Astrid posted one of these last week, and I commented on how much I liked it. And I was saying about, well, when you Photoshop that image into the frame, do it slightly differently. She then posted the images, and it became obvious that what we were looking at wasn't a picture frame with something Photoshopped into it. It's actually a mirror, which is a brilliant concept. And I really like this one, the reaching out on there. A little bit of feedback for you, Astrid, on this, and that's to do with keeping both your subjects in focus. And this is a bit of a problem because you can't get them the same distance away. The one in the mirror is always going to be further away than the person holding the mirror. So the only thing you can do with that is to go for a really wide depth of field. And the way to achieve it is to start thinking about where you actually focus and use a depth of field calculator. There's a really good one produced by Martin Bailey, and it calls it My Photography Friend, and it's an app for iPhone. I don't know whether he's yet made it available for Android, but have a look at that. If not, there are websites, DOF calculator, I think, is one, where you can work out a depth of field for a particular aperture. And not only that, it will tell you the near point and the far point, and therefore where you need to focus. So the trick with this is not necessarily focusing on either of your subjects, but to find that optimum point between the two. And effectively, it's a third of the way between them, which is slightly confused by the fact that the distance in the mirror, you've got to allow for from you to the mirror to back to calculate it. But you should then be able to find a focal length a focus distance and an aperture, which will allow both of them to be in sharp focus. And if you can do that, you can get some really, really good shots. I much prefer the earlier ones where the two subjects are interacting with each other. So I would strongly advise going on along that approach with it, making something of the interaction between them through the mirror. John, I know, will be watching on a replay. He didn't turn up last week for the live stream, and this is the reason why. He was photographing this at Blackpool, which I quite like, except just a couple of nitpicks on it, John. The top of the tower being clipped, pet hate of mine, and whilst I often quite like having the odd bird in there with it, I think that one is in the wrong place. So what I would do is I'd move it. Let's see if I can do this. Right, how am I going to do it? I need a... right, sorry, I was looking in the wrong place. My mistake. I'm going to do something like that. Now, here's the trick. I want it to appear somewhere, maybe round about there. I now grab that to put over there. If I put it to heel, come out of there, I've moved it. Now, once I've got it to the new location, I can put another one over here to remove the original. So who says you can't move things in Lightroom? So I can move that bird to somewhere where I wanted it, even in Lightroom. But whatever tools you use, I think it looks better higher up than low down on that shot. I like this one, the large seagull close up, but I would like to lose the bits down here. So again, get rid of that. And that down there. So that just tidies it up a little bit on there. Almost looks like there's a spot round that one, a bit weird. But yeah, nice shot, John, on there. Sonia, again, thank you for sharing your wonderful underwater macros. Really enjoying seeing those. How much more feedback I can give you, I don't know, because they're also good. This feels slightly underexposed to me, looking at the histogram. I'd be tempted just to push it up a little bit on there, but I don't know whether the colour, that means the colours are no longer natural for it on that, but I think it just feels as though it could do brightening slightly. I know we talked about these images from Bob last time, but Bob went away and did a test. And what he discovered, and seems to be backed up with my own findings, is that when you are using Affinity for creating HDRs, it does it much, and panoramas, it seems to do a lot better when you do it with the JPEGs, processed to a JPEG, then join them together, than doing it with the RAW files, because this one was with the RAW, that was with the JPEGs, and notice with the clouds how they are blown out. Marcia, thank you for joining the group and sharing this image. A couple of little things. I think it can just do with lightening up a little bit. And I'm trying to work out, I think it needs a little bit of a tilt to it on there. We've got some odd colour here that's distracting. I think the interesting factor on this is definitely the corals. So one of the things I would probably do with this is, if I'd got a lens which allowed me to come in much, much closer, an image looking like that, now I haven't got the resolution on this, I think is a more interesting shot, especially if we can do, yeah, I'm trying to get an angle on this with that join. You just come in just a fraction more, something like that. If that was higher resolution, when it was created in macro mode, I think that would have been a slightly more interesting image. So think about doing that type of thing with your images as well, Marcia. Richard, nice one of the otter, slightly underexposed actually. I would just give that a little bit of a boost in the shadows on there. Love the bokeh effect in the background with it on there. So nice shot. And this one, which I think was just a grab shot on a phone, but I love this reflection and the colour of it. It looks like it's positively glowing. Really works well. A nice choice with the cropping top and bottom as well on there. Really like that. John, quite like this black and white. I know you're going for a silhouette. I'm not sure whether I want to see a bit more detail in there. There's none there for me to pull out. I would like to see just a little bit higher up on the trees though with it. Just a little bit more to the top on that. Final one from Bob with panoramas and HDRs. This is a 10 out of 10 from me. Lovely shot as they've all been put together. I just really like how this one works. Gives a real sense of the place to me on that. I really like it. Well done. Mickey, don't know whether you're watching tonight, but you just need straightening up. That's all with that. I would probably give it a little bit more exposure. Again, going off the histogram on there, but nice capture. Tells a little bit of the story about where we all are at the moment. There's no tourists around, people wearing masks and that. I'm assuming this is the back streets of Venice on there, but nice shot, Mickey. Ina Maria, I love this shot of the robin, well captured. A little bit of noise in there on that, so I would just do a little bit of noise reduction in it, mainly luminance noise on that. And if I do that, I probably want to add a little bit of sharpening to counteract, to go with it on something like that. And if I've got any sharpening at all, I would then hold the Alt key down and just mask it so that the sharpening only applies to the edges and not to any of the areas where there might be noise. So I just do something like that to it. So I don't know where, I'll go full screen so that you can hopefully see this before and after. It just, no, that's before, that's after. If you just look at the noise here, without the noise reduction with it, and that's the little tweak on there. With that, now moving on. Andy, right, love the sunset. I'm much more of a sunsets person than a sunrise person, Andy, so I really like this. Nicely processed, those sort of warm tones. Just two things to be aware of with it. This sort of orangey processing, I suspect you've used something similar to DxO plugins or something like that to process it. That's only a guess, but that type of look that comes with that is getting to be used an awful lot these days, and just be aware that it's losing its impact partly on photographers because everybody's doing it. That's not to say it doesn't do a good job, but it's becoming it's starting to become a little bit cliched with it, if that's what you've done. If that's the natural look, then absolutely well done on there. The only other thing I would try to avoid with it would be, I'd look at the camera positioning to avoid having the sun bang in the middle of it. I'd like to see it slightly off to one side, and it's a subtle thing, but if you'd have framed maybe like that to take it off to one side, I think is slightly stronger with it. I think it works better. We've still got this nice lead in from the corner, but the sun just off to one side. Now, one of the things I want to mention is if you're interested in how photos like this are created and what's involved with them, Andy has created a video of him making this and the shooting process of it. I can't remember, Andy, whether you talk about the settings on there or not, but it's certainly worth looking, and a really nice intro of Andy getting into position for it. A nice bit of camera work on there. The link to it is down below. Once I sign off, go and have a look at Andy's video on there. It's worth having a view on YouTube on that. Anne-Marie, nice sunset. Love the birds overhead acting as a framing element. And the framing element of the sea and the ship on the horizon. The sun is blown out. Not a lot you can do about that, to be honest. You might be able to, if you spent time in post-production, just to bring that back to pure yellow. I don't know whether I can do it quickly enough on it in here. Let me have a go. Right, I'm going to go with, and I'm going to go full screen so you can see this. Right, I am going to say auto mask. I'm going to do a color overlay of, oh, I can't color pick on there. It's a bit dark. Why is that a bit dark? Bring that right up to, I'm going to try it on there. Okay, and then if I say bring the exposure down on it, with the auto mask on there, I should be able to paint in on the white bits. Yeah, it's not doing it quite as I want. It's getting there. Oh, the flow. Bring me flow up. It might work a little bit quicker. Not quite. It's a matter of getting the right right settings. I'd have to spend a little while playing around with it to try and get that to be less blown out in there. It's not quite worked, but it would be possible to reduce it on there. No, I can't do it quick enough on that, so I'm moving on. A nice concept, Anne-Marie, but this is badly out of focus. I'm afraid I would classify that as a reject, if I'm brutally honest with you. I love the concept, but it's so far out of focus that, or camera shake more likely, given that. Put it on tripod. If you were on tripod, the chances are you've got image stabilization turned on and that's causing it. But that, I think, is the problem with that. You can see as I come in, it's just not sharp at all on the background there. It doesn't matter on the water, but it does on that background, and that kind of spoils it. Richard, lovely black swan, nice one. Petra, right, this is again back to hero figures, hero flowers. So if I come back to this, trying to work out where your focus point is on here, and it looks like it's down here. I would have expected it to be on this flower, and it doesn't appear to be, so that appears to be soft on there. So I'm just thinking about what the correct focus is. I would have probably focused on this flower in the middle of it. That edge, it's weird because that edge looks sharp, but the rest of the flower doesn't. Very difficult to tell on the low resolution Facebook image. I would need to see the full resolution on there. Again, why I keep saying to people, send me your large images. Another great underwater macro from Sonia. I'll move on. And then I've got to give mention to A set of 4 images from Richard. These were created at the event I've been running at the studio this week. I did 2 nights of this, Thursday night and Friday night, and these are the images that Richard created, and I think these are absolutely fantastic, Richard. Well done. This is my favourite. I think it ought to be called the Siren Bride on there, because it just looks like a bridal veil behind her on there, all made out of water on there. Fantastic shot. Well done, Richard. And that's just a lovely, fun water wig shot. So well done. Sonia, nice to see a different castle, and I prefer this to some of the other castles that you've shown because we've got the sky in it. I know where they're built makes it difficult, but this one really works nicely. That strong diagonal going through there really works as well, and the bird's in not a bad position. I'm not going to try moving that one on there, and that is it for your images for this week. Right, let's have a look at the chat while I've been doing there. Right, Gary saying the coral close-up in black and white would be interesting. Yeah, black and white, a good idea on that, Gary. Andy says, yeah, it makes sense on my feedback. The end image ended up as being, it was an HDR, right, okay. I knew there was something that had been going on with it. With that, it's a lovely shot. It really is a lovely shot. It's just I see a lot that look very similar to it, and I'd just like to see something that pushes it beyond what others are doing, because I know you can do that, Andy, because I've seen your work. And it's not a criticism, it's about pushing you to yet the next level on there, on that. So let's just wrap this up. I've gone on far too long. I promised I would keep these to an hour and half an hour over. Right, nothing more in there. So this should be member photo of the week. Big drum roll. No, still can't do it. And the photo this week is, I had to pick it because, well, this week was coming back to the events at the studio. So well done, Richard. Member photo of the week with your brand new R5 as well on there. And I flipped it because of the logo, and that's how it will appear. And I will be updating the cover very shortly on there with that. So whose will be the image next week? It was a close run thing this week. There were several I was thinking about, but I really love this one of Richard's. So thank you everyone for bearing with me with the problems we had at the start. It's weird. It really is weird. Next week I'm going to look at reflectors, which again ties in with our challenge. So that's a head up on there. So post any images where you've used reflectors to the Facebook group. And until next week, thanks for watching. Keep making great photos, and I'll see you all next Sunday. Bye for now. Right, time for the cut down version of the ending, which I do each week, and one day I'll get around to actually using them. So anyway, here we go. Thanks for watching this cut down version of Ian's Studio Live. I hope you enjoyed what you watched. The full show is now exclusive to my Academy members, details of which are over my shoulder. So do join up on there. It's a great way of saying thank you for keeping the shows running. And you see the full thing if you tune in each week anyway. And highlights are being posted as separate videos. So thanks for watching. And until next time, keep making great photos. And I'll see you next time. Bye for now.